Yo, what's up? Andrewcast episode 26. We're here with Greg Holdsman, creator of Philly Famous Podcast.
You got it.
Guy's super talented once again with Ryan Acuna.
How you doing, everyone?
The man, the philosopher, the great thinker. And I just got done listening to your podcast probably last week before the Super Bowl, and you had the long snapper on, right, from the Eagles?
Yeah, Rick Lovato.
So how did that go down? Did you go to like the locker room and stuff? Like what was going on?
Yeah,
with
so I can't reveal, I guess, patient information, but put it this way: my girlfriend works at a gynecologist, and Rick Lovato's girlfriend is a patient there, and I guess he was in the office with her, and she got his information and told him that her boyfriend has a podcast called Philly Famous, and I texted him that later that day, and he was super nice, invited me down to the NovaCare complex where the Eagles practice. It was a couple days before they left for Minnesota, and he took me through the locker room. We recorded in the players' lounge, so I think Malcolm Jenkins and Hicks were playing ping pong while we were recording, and that's the noise in the background. And no, it was a great experience, and if you haven't yet, please check out that podcast. I think it's one of my stronger ones.
Yeah, you have like a solid, I think it's a little over half an hour interview where he talks about just like his mindset before the game and like the music he listens to, which is really cool. I like this whole take where he's just like, a lot of athletes hype themselves up before they play the game. He's like, I just try and get the complete opposite, just total zen, where I just like block everything out and just really listen to like calming, soothing. He said he listens to reggae music. Like it's kind of the opposite of what you think, a professional athlete would listen to.
Yeah, I asked him if he listened to Eminem before the game, like a lot of athletes do, and he's like, "No way! Like, it gets me way too amped up. I need to be mellow before the game starts."
Yeah, man, that was such a cool opportunity.
Was he what you expected him to be in terms of personality?
He's a long snapper, so he doesn't get a ton of media attention. So he's not, quote unquote Hollywood. He doesn't think he's this, amazing guy that's above like normal people. So he was surprisingly down to earth, and had no problem speaking to me, who I'm a brand new podcaster. I'm nobody, and my brand and doesn't really mean anything yet to someone like him. So he was incredibly kind to do that.
Yeah, dude. You could hear the humility too, man. Just like the kindness. I think the words you just used were like not Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how he came off as, just a regular dude. And that's something that it seems like Philly Famous as a podcast has been very cool. I've listened briefly to excerpts of like a few episodes. You've really been able to like sit down with artists and creators, and you're kind of an on the fly thing. Like you really don't have a studio, right? You just kind of.
I have a makeshift studio now in my parents' house, similar to you.
Yes,
in my attic, and I've kind of decorated a little bit. Put some pictures up, some quotes in the room, and a lot of my guests have said they like the atmosphere of it. Now I light a candle. I'm not really sure why I do that, but one day I just lit a candle, so now I do that for every episode.
And set the mood.
It sets the mood.
Is
and
it scented?
It is scented. I think it's like a vanilla scent.
Oh, that's the best one.
And so my people that have come on have enjoyed that.
That's cool, man. But
okay, you said you're just getting started out. Like how long?
Yeah, so I started in late October. Do you want me to get right into it right now in terms of?
Dude, yeah, if you could take us back to the beginning, man, that'd be cool. But do it at your own time, whatever you want to discuss.
Let me start at the beginning. Before I start, let me just say that, I'm gonna get into the big reason why I started this. It all has to do with concussion, and let me just start by saying that I'm still having daily symptoms, and upon my doctor's recommendation. I did smoke some marijuana earlier today, so I'm a little bit loopy, but I'm going to try to explain this
under doctor's orders.
The best that I can.
Yeah, man.
So I went to Central High School in Philadelphia. It's a great public school. You have to apply to get in. It's the most diverse school in the country. It's 30% white, 30 black, 30 Asian, and 10 other.
Wow.
I loved going there. I came from Penn Charter, which is a small private school. I went there K through 9 and then transferred to Central my sophomore year. Best decision of my life. I was a big-time athlete growing up. In high school, I played baseball and basketball, and I was lucky enough to go play college basketball at Denison University in Granville, Ohio, which is a small liberal arts Division III basketball school. And I had a difficult freshman year in terms of adjusting to the rural, small nature of the school. And
it's not the city, man.
It's not the city, and I didn't really have a good, I guess, basketball situation for me. I love the coach and I love my teammates, but I really didn't play well my first year, and I didn't get a ton of time. And late in the year, I got my first concussion, which was actually, now that I think about it, the worst one. I got knocked out and still don't remember the ride to the hospital, and I had some short-term memory loss, but I recovered within 1 week. I was back to the court, and I didn't really think much of it after that. I knew I had a bad hit, but it didn't really affect me in any way. You want to say something?
I was just going to say, so what kind of play caused you to get this concussion?
Yeah, I'm curious.
I was just coming around the screen, defending somebody, and he cut one way and then immediately cut back the other way, and I was right in his way, and I think his head hit my mouth. And I vaguely remember it happening.
So he rocked your jaw pretty much.
Yeah, it was my jaw basically. So I had like a, I can send you a picture later. My lip was all fat and it was blown up, and like it was kind of like my lips were sideways almost.
So nothing intentional.
Nothing intentional, no. Just I've been playing basketball for I had been playing for 15, 16 years, and this was the first time I really got hit in the head, and it was completely accidental. But that was the first one, and like I said, it was the hardest hit I've ever gotten, but the recovery was so short, and that tends to be what the first concussion is, the really short recovery, because your brain heals really fast that first time. So fast forward, that summer, going into my sophomore year, I worked my butt off, both in the weight room and on the court to get better. I came into my sophomore year in the best shape of my life. I was really prepared to enjoy my sophomore year from a social standpoint as well, by branching out, meeting more people, and I was much more open to being at the school and immersing myself.
You're getting the hang of the college life second
right,
time
exactly.
around, yeah.
Freshman year was difficult, but as it is for a lot of people. My brother's at Michigan right now, and he's going through a tough time.
Transition, man. That's just what it comes down to.
Exactly. You just have to change your mindset and let go of home, let go of your high school, and really just dive into college. And that's what I was prepared to do. 2 weeks into the semester, playing at open gym, I was going for a loose ball. Teammate runs to the ball to get it, kind of to race me there, and his shoulder clocks me in the head. I shook it off real quick. I knew I felt different. I had this really weird kind of foggy feeling, but I kept playing. I was really trying not to think about that I hit my head. So, get done playing, go home that night to my dorm room, go to sleep. We have to wake up at 5 a.m. the next morning for a team lift. I do the entire lift, which was like a super heavy, intense upper body. I think actually it was a total body lift. I felt awful that day in class. I went to play more one-on-one later that day despite feeling horrendous.
Headaches? Or what kind of stuff were you experiencing at this time?
So at that time, it was this symptom that I later discovered was called disassociation or fogginess, which is essentially the feeling that the world is happening around you. You don't really feel like you're all there. It's a really difficult feeling to describe. The best way I can describe it is the combination of feeling drunk and hungover at the same time.
Whoa.
Okay. There's this thing called punch drunk syndrome, that some people develop with post-concussive syndrome, or later on when they develop CTE. Is that something along the lines of...
It's exactly what that is.
Okay.
So, and what I'm getting at is that symptom lasted for 4 months.
Okay.
Wow.
That post-concussive syndrome really set in, and it wasn't until that 2 days later after I hit my head that I really realized that I had a concussion. Within a month it didn't go away, so I went home to see doctors in South Philly, and all they really told me was, you just gotta go back to school, and you can't play, you can't really do much right now, but you gotta just do your best to get better by resting and slowly and gradually getting back into schoolwork and exercise. And I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit, but that took me 4 months. Mm-hmm. It was a rough semester. Luckily I pushed through school and did fine. It was probably my worst semester so far, but I did fine. Not really worried about that. I really missed the entire season, but I came back with like a few weeks left and ended up practicing with the team. Really wasn't happy at this point. I had the roughest 4 months of my life with the concussion. A month after that, which was about February, it was actually Valentine's Day, or the day before Valentine's Day, I broke up with my 3.5 year long girlfriend who was at home. She's actually at Temple now, and I guess my reasoning was that I really had not enjoyed my first year and a half at college. I had some mild depression, and I figured, you know what, something has to change. Maybe if I can, be single at school, I'll be happier, and the next few years will not be as tough for me. Looking back, I have no regrets, but that reasoning didn't seem to make too much sense looking back now.
Okay. Do you think this concussion that you accumulated, do you think that had a role in your breakup?
Absolutely. I mean, it completely changed my mindset on a lot of things, and you'll see with my explanation of my next couple concussions, I really think that, my attitude towards life and my perspective on myself and the world around me has been a complete roller coaster. So that happened. I made the decision that I wanted to look at other schools, not for basketball necessarily, but just because I needed to be closer to home. I just needed a change. I felt like I didn't know myself since my senior year of high school. I felt like things had just gone really downhill. So I decided I was going to go to Muhlenberg, which is another Division III school in Allentown, Pennsylvania, to play basketball. They had a brand new coach, and I was excited. I came home in May from Denison after my sophomore year. Was really excited for the summer to go to Barcelona on a 1-month study abroad,
Nice.
And then to go to Muhlenberg in the fall. 2 weeks into the summer, I was in the weight room with one of my best friends from high school, and we were doing supersetting of benching and medicine ball slams. And on my first set of medicine ball slams, I slammed the ball, and it came up and bounced up and hit my head.
Oh my gosh.
I was used to the medicine balls at Denison, which were like full of sand. That didn't
How heavy
bounce.
was this one?
It was like a 18-pound ball.
Okay.
And I slammed it, as hard as I could over my head, bounced up, hit me in the head. I didn't think anything of it at first. I was really, really trying not to think about the worst case scenario because I had just had 4 months of my life in that previous year with symptoms, and I knew what that was like, and I refused to go back to that. Fortunately this time I didn't continue the workout because I had known that was the worst thing for me with my last concussion, which is why I didn't heal.
Gotta sit out.
So I stopped. I went home, took a nap. I didn't tell my parents for 4 days what had happened.
Oh man.
Because I was just so scared of their reaction. I thought they were going to say, you're done playing basketball. This is your third one. You probably should stop. And I was terrified of that. So I didn't tell them. We had put down the deposit to go to Muhlenberg. I picked my classes that week, and I was just praying that I was going to get better within a couple days. And I started to feel a little bit better later that week, and I decided, you know what, I had lost 4 months of my strength and conditioning earlier this year, and I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm in the best shape of my life, and I want to keep going. So I went back to the weight room, and I did a super heavy workout with a friend of mine, and very idiotic. It was the worst thing I could have done. The lifting and the strain was just not good for a head that wasn't fully healed, and I felt the worst I think I felt up until that point, in terms of dizziness, headache, feeling not all there, fatigue, light vomiting, and I told my parents at that point, and they were disappointed, but urged me to still go to Barcelona and study abroad. So I went that week, and I'm just going to shorten it. I was there for a month and a half. It's a beautiful, beautiful city in an amazing country. I traveled to Rome too. I went to Mallorca.
That was your first time leaving the country?
No, it was not my first time leaving the country. It was my second time in Europe and my first time on my own.
Okay.
But I'm just going to put it this way. I was miserable the entire time.
Oh, man.
It's really difficult to explain the feelings you get with multiple concussions, and especially when some depression sets in. It's impossible to feel joy, and it's difficult to really understand what that means. But no matter what you're doing, whether you're at a beach, whether you're at a party, whether you're just at an amazing, beautiful monument, I couldn't feel anything besides misery. It was really difficult. It was the first time in my life that I understood what wanting to kill yourself felt like. I never at any point thought about suicide, but it was the first time in my life that I could put myself in someone else's shoes and really understand what that might feel like to have the urge to end your life because you're just that miserable and you feel that hopeless.
So real quick, you said that you just felt this overwhelming depression, that led towards thinking about suicide, correct? So did these things come in waves or was it constant?
So that is one of the things that led me to feel that helplessness and hopelessness is that it was constant.
Okay.
So I'd wake up feeling like this and go to bed feeling like this.
Okay.
There was no end in sight. And I knew that at some point I was probably going to feel better, but I felt that I had just messed up my recovery so bad by not taking the proper time to rest. Every day in Spain I was walking miles every day to class, and I wanted to try at least to enjoy the experience, so I was trying to fully immerse myself in it, but the reality was my body just wasn't going to let me do that. So go ahead.
I was going to say, at what point did this transition from every once in a while you get these headaches, every once in a while you feel a bit down, every once in a while you just need to lay down a little bit, to this constant depression, this constant feeling of hopelessness?
It was probably the day after I decided to lift weights, a week after I hit my head.
Okay.
Other workout.
Once that happened, it was misery, and it was very similar to the disassociation, fogginess feeling that I had with my second concussion earlier that year, but it was deeper because it was the second time I was going through this within the span of 5, 6, 7 months, and I knew what lay ahead, and I knew how long the recovery takes. And at this point, I was still planning to go play basketball at Muhlenberg, so I was still holding on to that. Although with each day of symptoms, that goal of doing that was dwindling. So I leave Barcelona in early July. I come home. The symptoms are as bad as ever. I have this new symptom that I called uncenteredness. And if you ever wear contacts, it felt like you were wearing one contact and not the other. Something just felt out of balance, and it was a really, really uncomfortable feeling. Ugh. And from the time of July until I would say early October, I had this symptom. It would last for a week, go away for 3 days, and then last for a week. And it wasn't until October that I realized that it was a form of a migraine, and luckily now I'm on medication for it, and I haven't got that feeling since October, knock on wood. I'm going to start actually weaning off of that medication in the next week or so. So I decided to go to Temple with my parents' advice as well, for me to retire from basketball. My doctor said it was best to retire from basketball as well, and so to continue my education at Temple. And I knew I was still recovering, and I at this point it was August, like I still felt like completely miserable. Like it wasn't about basketball at this point. Like I had gotten over that sadness of losing basketball, which was my identity for so long as an athlete, and I was just Greg, the basketball player. A lot of people knew me like that. I was more than just a jock, but it was a huge part of my identity. Working out, competition was just so important for me. But after a month or so, like that was nothing compared to the depression of not knowing if and when I was going to feel better.
Oh, yeah, so I just feel like it's not only this concussion change, but it's a lifestyle change on top of it.
Completely. And my friend had the flu this past week, and he told me, Greg, I had this feeling that I think was similar to your fogginess, where you don't feel like you're all there, and I didn't want to do anything. If anybody invited me out of the house, like I just wanted to lay in bed, and like now I kind of understand what you felt like. And I was like, yeah, man, I mean, I can completely empathize with you, because that's exactly the way I felt for months, is that I had to keep living my life despite not wanting to do anything. But you have no choice. You can't just quit and give up.
Right.
Because I think the only thing that kind of helped me deal with it is just the hope and the desire to one day feel like myself again. And I have this quote in my studio now. It says, "The only thing permanent in life is change," which is completely true. There's always a chance if you work for it that things will get better. And I'm still at the point in my recovery where I'm not 100%, but if I look where I was 5 months ago, it's so different, and 5 months from now it's going to be so different. But so, fast forward to early October. I'm at a friend's party. I'm still not feeling great. I just started this medication for my migraines, and I had started an antidepressant, which was helping. And I'm at a party, and I'm walking upstairs, and he's got the super low roof. Hit my head on the top of the ceiling.
Like the top of your head.
Top of my head. And I did. At first, my first thought was, oh my God, great, take a deep breath because this is not happening again.
Oh boy.
And meanwhile, I'm still not recovered from the other ones, which is doubly as bad. So this recovery probably took a month until like probably mid-November to feel not all the way better again, but to feel before I had that hit. Mm-hmm. So that added probably another month to the recovery. But in early November, late October, I decided to start my own podcast. And this is why, because during these concussions, I had these recoveries where I was not allowed to watch TV. It hurt to watch TV. Exercise was a no-no. I couldn't, go for a 15-minute walk without feeling like I wanted to fall over. Wow. All I did was listen to podcasts, and I credit podcasts with keeping me somewhat sane. Yeah, man. I listened to Part of My Take, which is the best and funniest sports podcast. I listened to Tim Ferriss, listened to some Joe Rogan.
Oh, Joe Rogan's great.
There was probably 10 I listened to every day. And I really credit podcasts with not letting me do things I probably shouldn't do.
Podcast is your way of fighting back against this situation.
Exactly. So I started my podcast in late October. I had no idea how to use GarageBand. I had never done an interview in my life. I'm generally not a very good public speaker. I had a mumbling problem. My family tells me that they don't hear what I'm saying. But for some reason, when I got in front of the mic, I felt pretty comfortable.
Nice.
And the whole idea was, I called it Philly Famous. I had my friend design my logo. The first idea was to talk to people from Philly that have made a name for themselves in all areas of pop culture, whether that's sports, TV, music, business, the food industry, medicine. And that's what I started doing, and it started off pretty well. And then, my idea was I wanted to get people my age involved. So the second edition is under Philly Famous, but it's called Plug It Editions, where I talk to people from Philly that are, my age, early 20s, late teens, starting their own things, whether they're an entrepreneur starting their own business, whether they're an aspiring, up-and-coming artist or musician. And those have been pretty cool. I've really enjoyed those. And the third edition that I'm doing that I've started recently is called A Fly on the Wall, where essentially I have 3 or 4 friends of mine come around in a circle, and we pick one topic where there's no script, and I just throw it out there and we talk about it for however long. So the last one I just did was called Millennial Entrepreneurship, and me and 3 people got around the table and talked about the value of work versus school and what we perceive as the rise of millennial entrepreneurship and the shifting balance, I think, of towards work and professionalism over undergrad and school.
So how do you contact these people? Where do you find them?
So a lot of them come through connections. I'm already pretty plugged in just because I played basketball all growing up, and I'm just pretty, networked in the city, and my dad is as well. My dad runs Philadelphia Youth Basketball, which is a new nonprofit trying to build a $25 million state-of-the-art basketball center in the Logan Triangle of Philadelphia. That's going to have academics, mentorship, and basketball. So he's really plugged in. But beyond that, I have no problem emailing people. Like I said, with my girlfriend, meeting Rick Lovato's girlfriend at the doctor's office, like I told her right away, please ask him if he'd like to do the podcast.
Did you say please?
Yeah, I think I've learned that from my dad that just desire and will to and not being afraid to just go up to people and say, you know what, this is what I'm doing. I would love for you to be a part of it.
Dude.
What are you doing talking to me? Go ask him right now.
Right. The one part of the story that I did miss, I know that was probably a long and boring story.
No,
but
it's not.
But the one part of the story that I did miss was added to this awful sophomore year was in February, about a few weeks after I had fully recovered and was back playing. My parents were there for senior day and alumni day, so we had this alumni game in the morning, and then at night was the senior game. And earlier that morning, I was driving back from breakfast, and a cop pulled me over in campus, and I stayed pulled over. He came to the door, and stupid me, I pulled out my wallet. The first thing in my wallet was my fake ID. I was 20 years old at this point. No. I took it out. I put it next to me, and I gave him my real ID, and he's like, "What was that?" I wasn't gonna lie to a cop, so I said, "It's my fake ID."
Yeah.
He said, "Come back to the car with me." I sat in the back of the cop car. I texted my dad, like, "I'm in the cop car. I'm gonna be late for the game probably." He came and drove behind me, and like he thought he was being funny, so he came and took a picture of me in the back of the cop car. Cop wasn't having it. Didn't really help my situation.
Dad's a pretty brave guy.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, your dad's in the back of the car.
Right. And meanwhile, like I had.
It's like we're both good.
Meanwhile, like, I wasn't even really drinking. The previous night, I think I had used my fake ID to get my friend to drink. I wasn't even drinking.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even using it when I got caught with it. But he said, your court date is like next week.
Man.
So, I talked to my mom about it. We called the courthouse, and they said there's an alternative diversion plea program where you can just do some community service and 6-month probation and an online alcohol course. And I did that, and I filled out the paperwork, and I brought it to the station, and they were like, "Cool, you're good. We're gonna start this in a couple weeks." That Friday morning, I got a knock on my door at 9 a.m. Like, hard knock. I open the door. It's the same cop that pulled me over and said, "Greg Holdsman, I have a warrant for your arrest."
What?
And I was like, "What? Like, what is going on?" Like, he was like, "You didn't show up for your court date." And I was like, "I know." Like, I went to the station, and I gave him the paperwork for this plea program, for this diversion program. And he was like, "Well, there must have been an error in the system, so we have to take you into the station. Put me in cuffs." Everyone in my hall saw me.
Wow.
I wasn't even dressed. I had like sweatpants on and like flip flops in the winter.
Great.
Went down to the station. Got to figure it out, and that was it. And nothing really happened after that. I had to do the 6-month probation where I was couldn't drink because they could test me at any time and whatever. But it just it was nothing, but it added to the situation of, and that's kind of why I left. I was like, I'm not enjoying basketball. I've had this difficult life experience with my concussions, and now I just got arrested. I'm just not feeling it. I gotta get out of here.
If anything, you got some street cred over.
Right. No. So my brother put on
Greg
like
got arrested,
my
bro.
brother put on a Snapchat like hashtag like free Greg. Like,
man, he did.
Yeah. So that was funny. So
let's get it trending.
So that's I just wanted to add that little wrinkle to the story. But yeah. So no. So now I'm 2 months into or 2 or 3 months into my podcast. I have 35 episodes out. I've definitely put more time into the podcast than I have into school. I'm doing well in school, but like I said, it's just really low on my priority list right now for some reason.
I love the honesty.
So Temple, are you known as the podcast guy?
No, I haven't really accessed the Temple community as much. I should. I'm not a communications major. I'm a sociology major. So I'm one of my goals in the short-term future is to reach out to the communications department and see how we can kind of help each other, and kind of how they can help me promote my podcast. But I've really utilized my high school community. I would say 30-40% of my guests have been Central alumni, which is awesome. I love being at Temple. Like I said, I'm still not recovered, and I'm still going through issues on a daily basis. But I'm really glad to be home. I really missed Philly, and Philly's a really special place. And my perception on a lot of aspects of who I am and the world around me are constantly changing, and I feel like I'm at a much more advanced and mature part of my life right now. I have a new girlfriend who is incredible, and she's really been helpful in helping me feel back to myself. I'm doing well in school. I'm feeling productive with this podcast, and my identity is no longer as an athlete. But I'm forming a new identity, and I'm forming new passions. I'm turning my sadness in my situation into what I think is a new passion. I'm fascinated by this rising digital media field. I'm applying for a lot of internships this summer for various digital media or multimedia companies, something that I never would have thought of before ending my basketball career. Before I thought I was getting into coaching and maybe teaching. I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And now I have some sort of direction. And I'm just overall more appreciative for the people that love me, my family, my friends. I'm so much more appreciative for my health. And my tolerance for pain and suffering has changed a lot. A normal headache or a stomach ache or just a fever, like that stuff, or like, even a broken bone, like that stuff doesn't bother me anymore because it's nothing compared to the way I felt for the last year or so with my concussions. There's really, besides that feeling of disassociation and not feeling all there's nothing that really bothers me anymore, which is, I guess, is a good thing. I just have a super, super high tolerance for pain now.
Yeah, I mean, everything's relative, right?
Right.
And you've already experienced that extreme pain. It's crazy. I actually know someone else that went through a pretty significant injury with concussions. She was a lacrosse player at the Temple lacrosse team, and these started since high school. So she got concussions in high school. They took a little bit of time to heal. Then she went to college. I think she accumulated about 3 or 4 just at Temple lacrosse, and it got to the point where she couldn't even play anymore. And she was experiencing a lot of the things that you were talking about, like excessive headaches, depression. You couldn't concentrate, that fogginess you were talking about, and it's been a few years out, and she's still feeling those symptoms. I can't even imagine what that feels like.
Yeah, dude. I was getting anxiety just, like, hearing your description of stuff, bro. I'm serious.
It's not fun. I'll put it that way. I actually did a podcast last week, and I really recommend it. It's probably one of my best episodes with Aaron Carter, who's one of the lead sports writers for Philadelphia high school sports for the Inquirer.
I thought you were talking about the musician.
No, it's the same name. But
whoa.
He's an incredible story, and I had no idea before doing the podcast, but he's so similar to mine. Had gotten a car accident and has chronic leg pain.
Oh.
And he was a basketball player, was trying to play overseas, and ended his career. And he was describing to me the depression that set in, and he said that he would wake up and feel disappointed that he woke up because he knew that day was going to be full of pain and suffering.
Dang it,
and I said to him, Aaron, like, I completely empathize with you. I know exactly what that feels like to be upset that you woke up that day. I would wake up from dreams, because in my dream I wasn't concussed. When I was dreaming at night, it was just me, and waking up feeling like a different person. It's difficult to go through days like that, especially when you go for weeks or months at a time without that feeling have any break. There's no break. It's not like a headache where you take some Advil, goes away, and then comes back. Like, it was just constant 24 hours a day.
So yeah. You said dreaming. Did your dreams change after you got these concussions?
Yeah, well, now I would say 5 times a week I dream about hitting my head.
Really?
Which is, it's...
Whoa.
Yeah, it's so I'll wake up scared a lot of times. I'll wake up sometimes thinking that I hit my head on my bed.
So you're having nightmares, pretty much.
Yeah, they've decreased. It used to be like every night, but the one thing I haven't said is that now I'm so susceptible that every single time I lightly hit my head on something. So, like, I was giving a basketball workout 2 weeks ago, and the reason why we canceled a couple weeks ago doing this podcast is the kid just lightly the ball slipped out of his hands. And it landed on top of my head, and it wasn't hard. I was on the phone. I didn't even discontinue my conversation.
Yeah. But
I knew that, it was going to cause symptoms. So probably 5 or 6 times within the last 2 to 3 months, something like that has happened, and I've had to miss a week of school. And I don't call them new concussions. I call them irritations because I don't want to, keep tallying up my concussions. And I have to rest for a week, and then I feel back to the way I was feeling.
When you say rest, you're reducing noise stimuli, you're reducing light stimuli.
I'm really just not doing homework, laying on the couch, listening to podcasts. That's really what rest is.
Okay.
And I really cut out all exercise. But I've spoken to my doctors about it, and they've made me, they've comforted me a little bit and made me feel a little better in the sense that the media really does overblow some of the impacts of concussions. A lot of what the media focuses on are football players and boxers, and a very small percentage of these athletes are getting really serious long-term effects. once again, it's a very low percentage, and these are guys who from the time they start playing football, say at age 7 until they retire at age 30, every day in practice, every day in the games, are hitting their head on almost every single play.
Dang, bro.
And those are the people that are experiencing these serious memory losses. Really early onset of Alzheimer's, dementia, and an early death. And that's not me. And I think one of my biggest fears, beyond feeling miserable day in and day out, which I don't anymore, luckily, is the long-term effects of memory and never really feeling like you're going to be yourself again. Never really feeling you're going to make a full recovery. That's my biggest fear and anxiety. And my doctors have kind of alleviated that worry by telling me that, all concussions are different, but, I've only hit my head really seriously hard like 3 or 4 times, and the other times were just light kind of taps. And I will recover. Like, they keep telling me, you will recover. And for me, it's difficult to believe them because I've been through this for so long now.
Right. They're not going through the pain.
Exactly.
So when somebody says that.
At times, I felt like I know more than my doctors because the concussion research is still so new, and doctors are really just, they're not guessing, but they're making an educated guess at this point with recovery, and they're testing new techniques. My one doctor said he thinks in 5 years medical marijuana will be the leading treatment for concussions, and that the reason NFL players come back so fast is because they'll hit their head, go home, smoke a joint, and it doesn't heal their concussion, but it makes them feel better.
Alleviates.
And so for me, like, after hitting my head, like, I had no desire to go back to the court. Like, the way I felt, it wasn't like, people were telling me I can't play, but, I really could if I wanted to. Like, no, I did not feel like I could physically play. Like, I feel like I would fall over. So I had no desire to, but I'm assuming that these NFL players are able to because they smoke weed right after they get hit.
Right.
But back to what I was saying, it's difficult to trust the medical professionals dealing with my head, and because I haven't seen myself really get better yet. I've done physical therapy, I've done vestibular therapy, I've done ocular therapy, I've gone to the chiropractor. All this stuff has maybe helped a little bit, but it's really, it just takes time, and you just have to be patient.
Do you find that your impulses have become harder to control? Because that's one of the side effects from getting concussions and chronic traumatic encephalopathy is what that can lead to.
What do you mean my impulses?
So they say impulse control. Like you are more impulsive, you can't control things. Say you get angry, and you are prone. You're more prone to lash out than as opposed to if you didn't get a concussion, if you didn't have that head trauma. Because they actually did. Suicide's also a symptom of something that can happen when you accumulate all these concussions because of the depression. And there actually was a story about I think it was a Kansas City Chiefs football player. I think it was a lineman, and he suffered all these concussions, and then he murdered his son, his wife, and himself. Therefore, afterward, and he left a suicide note for everyone after that. And then they did a post-mortem autopsy on his brain, and they realized that he had severe swelling.
Was the suicide note indicating that he might have an internal issue?
I think just the fact that he played for the NFL and they knew this was an issue for NFL players, I think that led them to trying this out.
Okay.
But basically what they found was that he had severe swelling, and I guess they attributed that to why he was depressed, why he had this lack of impulse control where he murdered his wife and his son. Why his suicide note said he was depressed and that he couldn't go on living anymore, and that he was sorry for everyone, including his wife, including his son, who he murdered, which is unfathomable.
Obviously, where my head's at, it's not that serious.
Of course.
No.
I'm not saying it is.
But I will say this: beyond the physical daily symptoms I'm feeling, the only changes I've noticed are this: one, I don't feel as sharp as I used to. Like, thoughts don't come to my head as quickly. My memories don't feel as clear in my head. But that could all just be from anxiety. The one thing that constantly kept reoccurring before I started on medication was just an overwhelming feeling of sadness at times.
Wow.
Where I wasn't even thinking about anything sad. It was just this feeling, and it's difficult for me to explain because I never had this feeling before getting these concussions. I guess this is what depression feels like. It's a feeling just like a headache's a feeling. Like, it's a physical feeling. I remember sitting by myself at a cafe in Barcelona, and tears started coming down my face, and I had no idea why. Like, I wasn't thinking about anything sad. I was just eating food, but this just immense, overwhelming feeling of sadness just came over me.
And you've told this to your doctors, but they still say that everything's okay, you need some time, and then eventually you'll get better.
Yeah, it wasn't, looking back on it, it wasn't the right decision to go away from my family for that amount of time while I was going through this. And that was probably not helpful to go through that early stages of depression without my family there. But no, my doctors have always kind of erred on the side of optimism with me. And what's strange is that I always, for the last few months, have seen myself as a pretty pessimistic person. But the more people are around me, and my doctors and my therapist that I'm with now, tell me what a positive person I am and the positive outlook I have on this. I guess I'm seeing that now. But for a while, like, I thought I was the most negative person in the world.
Dude, from the time I've hung out with you and from what you've been saying on this podcast, like, I'd have to agree with your friends and doctors. Like, you seem like such an optimist. Maybe you're a realist. Is that what you're trying to say?
Like, I guess, like, this is it was the first time in my life for the last, year or so that I feel like I've seen the world in a negative light. And, I've seen bad things happen to good people, and bad things just happen every day.
Yeah.
And I guess, I thought I've been seeing the worst in people, and that's changed now. And there's a silver lining in everything. I wouldn't have started this podcast had it not been for my concussions. I wouldn't be with my current girlfriend if it wasn't for my concussions. That being said, though, like, if I didn't feel better than I did this summer, like, it wouldn't have changed. Like, I wouldn't have, like, I guess, got over this giant hump or dug myself out of this hole. Like, it was all predicated on me feeling better. And I do feel a little better now, and I'm still, I still have about 15-20% left to feel all the way myself. But, it was really all predicated on my symptoms decreasing, because it was not livable. That's the way I kept telling my doctors. I said, something's wrong here. And, like, he didn't know it was a migraine, and that's why I'm glad I went out of my way to try medication to help it, because it did work. But, I told him, like, this isn't livable. Like, I can't go through every day feeling like this. It's just not, it's not livable. So once that symptom went away, I said, you know what, I don't feel well yet, but this is manageable. I can go on and be productive and live my life like this. Hopefully it gets all the way better, but the way I felt before, it wasn't manageable.
Dude, and just before we dissect anything else and bring up anything else in conversation, first off, I want to thank you for telling your story, one. And two, man, like, you are somebody who is remarkably brave. I mean, you're young, but you've had to deal with this issue of being uncomfortable in your own head, which is, like you said, so hard to vocalize. Like, how do you let people know that, like, my biological experience that I'm going through my brain right now is not right? Like, it's one thing to say, like, my arm hurts or my leg hurts, and I'm saying, like, I can't breathe properly. There we can begin, but, like, with head issues, man, like, it's crazy. Like, you started to actually feel uncomfortable in your own brain. Like, that picture I got of you mentally when you were describing sitting in the cafe in Barcelona, like, and you're crying, you're just like, dude, this is a problem. Like,
it's scary.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and one of the other difficult things about it is, like you said, it's your head. So you don't have a cast on your head. So when you're walking around, people aren't like, oh, that guy must be feeling shit.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like, especially in Barcelona without my parents there who knew what I was going through, it felt so alone at times to be with myself with these feelings.
Dude.
So that's tough to not have anybody understand what you're feeling, and
And the stigma too, they're writing you off like, oh, what's wrong with Greg?
Exactly. And people, and I myself would have done the same thing if I didn't have these concussions. I wouldn't believe what they really are. And I think before I had them, I had a couple friends that had pretty significant concussions, and I always thought they have some light headaches, they're fine, like they're just being pussies, whatever. Like, no, that's not at all what it is. It's very, very, very real. And it's nice now to be around people and friends that know what I'm going through and have made necessary changes in their lives to help me. My parents have been phenomenal. They've been like just complete rocks throughout it all. It's been, one thing I don't think about enough is how hard it is for the people around me. For me not to be like myself, that really affects my friends and family. So I have to really, be thankful for them. And like I said, I'm so much more appreciative of just my health on a daily basis. But, it does make me not feel so bad for people going through, everyone goes through their stuff. And that's what I've learned here is like, nobody's stuff is worse than anybody else's. But in terms of like illnesses and like, if someone says they have a headache now, like I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it could be so much worse.
Yeah. It's a whole what's your
So it's difficult
excuse
for me to sympathize with people who have these like little ailments now, even though I was probably one of those kids who complained about a headache before this concussion. But now it's like, there's been times where I've welcomed a headache because it's a different feeling from the one I had before.
Yo, that is deep, bro. That is deep.
Do you think you lost any friends after these concussions started?
It did affect some relationships. Like I said, it caused a breakup with my girlfriend. But I'm not blaming that on my cousins. That was on me. That wasn't on my head.
It's a life choice.
It's a life choice. And it's worked out now. I really love the girl that I'm with right now. But no, it did put some strain on some relationships because it was difficult for me to go out of my way every time having a conversation with somebody to tell them how I felt. And like, I can't go out with you to this place because I just really don't feel well enough to. And like 2 or 3 times, like they understand. But then when I guess the 4th or 5th time, they're like, Greg, I don't know what's up with you. Like,
yeah, why are you flaking on me?
Exactly. So really, my closest friends have stayed with me. But it did put some strain on some other relationships, and that's okay. Like, I'm glad to be around the people that have truly been by me the entire time.
Yeah, it's when you see who your friends are,
Exactly.
In the midst of animosity for everyone, dude, for everybody that's going through something. The people that stick around in the hard times, those are the real riders, as they say. But dude, you turned a situation that's a negative into a massive positive. And again, I have a similar story with podcasting. Mine isn't born of tragedy. You know what I'm saying? I'm very fortunate in the fact that I've never befallen anything that was as vicious as what you went through. But being a communication major, a lot of times you're writing papers. Like, that's what it is. And you're writing just like 12-page papers on some research thing. And, you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning and there's no one working with you at 4 o'clock in the morning. Unless you go to the tech, you have like some other crazy school buddy. So during those times, man, like on my downtime when I'm not writing, I'd listen to the podcast and like, same thing with drawing. I draw a lot at night and like podcasts are my best friends. So it's in those moments, man, when you feel super lonely that like podcasts can kind of like give you the illusion, positive illusion that other people are with you. And that's like the big thing that got me started into this, which I was like, man, if I can give that feeling to somebody else, like that would be immense. But now, dude, you're on your way, you're doing your podcast thing. And like, just tell me a little bit like what you've been learning from that, dude. And like just how cool that's been and just how transformational that's been.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more in terms of like the feeling of being interactive with somebody. And in my opinion, that's why the podcast industry is booming, and that's why people, in my opinion, have substituted podcasts for music in terms of what they do when they're doing nothing, whether they're driving, whether they're folding laundry, whether they're in the shower. Like, people are listening to podcasts now and not listening to music because they feel like they're interacting with others and they're part of a more holistic conversation, and you just feel connected, and that's what it's all about. But in terms of my podcast, I love it. I think it's so much fun. I think, if anything, if it doesn't go anywhere, if I don't end up making money from it, if it doesn't end up being what I do, I'm still, becoming a much better conversationalist. I'm making connections. Everybody that I've done a podcast with, I've stayed connected with, and we're helping each other move along in our lives and our careers, and it's helping me, as a resume builder for this summer. People like to see, oh, look at this kid started his own podcast. But I really, really do enjoy doing it, and like I said, I have 35 episodes out. I think they're getting better and better. I'm really open to suggestions, and I'm making changes every episode. And this is something that I would love to continue. I think at some point I do want to find a sponsor. Right now I have a sponsor who makes my shirts, and I give him a little ad on the podcast, but I'm not making any money from it yet. It's not really about the listenership for me yet. I still want to build my content out. I think that's the most important thing.
Right.
And just enjoy and just being me. I've learned that the episodes are much better when I don't hold anything back and when it's very genuine and when the guest is genuine. Nobody wants to listen to something that's fake, and that's why a lot of people don't listen to like classic radio anymore or censored TV shows, because people want to see.
We're past that now.
People want to see real emotion, real dialogue, and real opinions, and that's what I'm trying to give people. And I'm also trying to support people that are growing their own brands. That's why I've had a lot of people on my plug-in editions that are entrepreneurs. I have a kid that started an app, a bunch of people that started clothing lines. Rebecca Modell, who was on your podcast, she's an aspiring makeup artist and model. So it's really been a joy for me to support people in my generation that are doing very similar things to me in terms of preparing for their careers and building their own brand and really being pioneers. And now I feel like I'm a part of it all with them. Where previously I was a basketball player. I took school seriously, but I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And now I'm motivated and enthused by the up and coming generation of young professionals, and I'm really excited to be a part of it.
What's crazy, man, you might want to say something. I'm just going to say something really brief.
Please.
You start off saying, even if this doesn't become successful, I'm not going to be down. And then you continued to describe the exact philosophy which brings about success when you're just like, yeah, man, I'm not, even if it doesn't become successful, but I do it for fun, and I'm open to suggestions, and I'm making it better every day. And like, that's the attitude that brings success. So, like, I'll have no doubt that you'll be successful, because it would be completely different if you were just like, yeah, I don't know if it's going to be successful, but I want it to be this big and I want it to be like this podcast. But no, like, you just described pretty much the platform and path to making a successful podcast, where you talked about the unity and like the movement of podcasting, where you're linked with a whole bunch of people and how you're open to change it, and you're open-minded and you're working on making it better all the time. Like, that is just such I don't know, it's inspiring hearing your take on podcasting.
Well, I've got to credit a lot of my attitude and my mindset to my my college basketball coach, who once a week we would have core value meetings, which sounds silly, but a lot of the team really looked forward to them and appreciated them. And one of the common themes that we discussed in those core value meetings are, what can you control in your life? You can control your attitude and your effort. Everything else is out of your control. And that's really helped me get through the last year or so, when I've been really tested in terms of my patience, and I'm trying not to blame external factors. Yes, this bad thing or bad things have happened to me. Okay, now what are you going to do?
Right.
What can I control? I can control my attitude. At times, my chemicals in my brain got a little fucked up, and I got a little depressed, but for the most part, you can control your attitude. And then your effort, like, for me, especially with your own brand, like, it's going to go as far as you want it to go. It's how much work and how much effort you want to put into it.
That's the truth, man.
So for me, I've really tried, and that's another quote that's on the front of the door going into my podcast studio, is the only two things you can control in your life are your attitude and your effort. And it really applies to everybody. Like, think about it. What else can you control?
Right.
Nothing.
You're spitting truth there, man.
Yeah.
What were you about to say, Ryan? I'm sorry.
I was just going back to you talking about the future, and you talking about podcasts being the future. I was actually reading this article on CNN that talked about how video and audio are overtaking text. Like, text is going to be in the past, or they're leaving that in the past, and we're just all doing videos and podcast type of things in the future. That's what they were arguing. I was wondering what your opinion was about that. I mean, it seems like you're going towards that way.
Yeah, it's funny. I was on the phone with the head NFL writer for The Ringer, which is a pop culture and sports blog and podcast network. It's mainly sports, the ones I listen to. But I was set up with this guy just to talk about podcasting, and one thing he noticed about me is, like, I think you do want to get into this digital media field, but it sounds like you're most passionate about the audio side of it. And I never thought of it that way, but I guess he's right. Like, the written component of digital media and social media, is dwindling, and it's really becoming more audio and video. And I think that's the part that I want to be really linked to and a part of. And I think that, you know, it's sad that people don't really read anymore, but people would like to listen.
Well, why do you think we're making that switch? Just because it feels more personal?
People are lazy.
I was gonna wait for you to say it. I was gonna wait for you to say it.
People are lazy. You know,
I didn't want to put words in your mouth.
On one of my podcasts, someone talked about the value of books, and I was like, you know what, like, yes, like books are so valuable, and like,
but fuck them.
No, seriously. And I was like, you know what, and I myself need to read so much more because really, like, all the knowledge you need is probably in books. Like, but it's like I just don't find the time to read, and like I really do want to. I'm not saying that I won't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's much more convenient and less mentally straining just to listen to something.
And you can absorb the information faster. Like podcasting is just a brief example where on the app you can increase the speed. Like that, you know, that's something you can't do with a book, even if you are a fast reader. But it seems weird to imagine a time in the future where like scholars uncover like a newspaper and they're unable to read it. They're just like, what is this? Like, and people who are master the written language, they're like a rare breed.
We're going back to like ancient Egypt with the hieroglyphics with like our emojis. I mean, you can make a whole story. They made a fucking movie about it. What was that movie called?
It was the Emoji Movie, right?
The Emoji fucking movie. They made a whole fucking movie about emojis. Like, that's where we're going.
I don't doubt it, man. But you bring up a good point. People are lazy, but it doesn't mean that the information is any less more valuable. It's just going into a form it's digested in a completely different way.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that audio is the future because multitasking. That's why, as a society, you know, statistically, we are getting more productive. We're making more things. There's more audio and video content being produced now than any time in history. And when you're working on stuff, dude, you can be entertained by podcasting. I don't have to put anything down while I'm working on a car to have a podcast going in the background. And it's essentially listen to the radio, which is what people have done before us. But like you said, this is a more personal, tailored to a specific audience, demographic thing that doesn't follow the rules of the FCC, where you have to be careful what you say and watch your P's and Q's, which is the big thing for our generation because we're the internet generation. So the TV stuff doesn't do it for us anymore because you hit it on the head when you said raw emotion, real stuff. That's what we want to see, not as entertainment, not to dull our senses to it, but to relate to it and let it be a powerful tool in examining ourselves and understanding other stuff. That's why, you know, like with the Jason Kelce speech for the Eagles parade.
How incredible!
My opinion on that is that, you know, everyone was upset because he was cursing and stuff, but it was the same thing with the Phillies, right? It's like that's the genuine emotion that guy was feeling. All right, whether
Who got
or not,
upset though?
What?
Who got upset?
People did, not people that are like, you know, like.
I guess I've only been talking to Eagles fans.
Yeah, if you talk to older people, like, what's that young man doing on TV swearing up a storm? And it's just like, that's the emotion that he's feeling, whether or not you put it in those words.
It was so great because it was so real.
Dude, I drew a picture of him. I was so inspired. I was like, I have to draw this. But like, that's what we want to see as a millennial generation. With the internet, there's no going back. So I'm not sure how the FCC is going to continue to uphold certain things.
No, it's only going to get bigger. Like it's only growing. That's the thing, and that's why people are, you know, like, Greg, you're in a podcast, and like that's great because like that's the future. You know, I'd much rather, like, you know, I'm a big basketball fan. Yeah. I'd much rather listen to Kevin Durant on Bill Simmons' podcast than I would on ESPN Rachel Nichols interview.
Yeah, because you know what you're going to get on ESPN. When you know what you're going to get on something, sometimes you're like, why would I watch it?
Aren't they struggling a little bit? I mean, it seems like they're letting departments go and they're
ESPN. They're really struggling. They've you know, I think like really downsized by like 50%.
Didn't Barstool Sports clown them, or was it the NFL Network?
I think everyone's been clowning.
Yeah, everyone's been clowning them. Like, just like, and that, you know, I'm talking about the rise of digital media companies that are more alternative and not mainstream, like Sports Illustrated or ESPN. You know, that's where I'm applying the summer to like a Ringer, Barstool, BuzzFeed, Bleacher Report, you know, Vice, all these alternative media outlets that are really on the cutting edge of what's next.
You know what's great about those is, like you just said it yourself, cutting edge. I mean, I see what they do on Instagram, at least in terms of Bleacher Report, Barstool. They're always putting little clips of highlights, you know, Photoshop things about, you know, who won the game. They have something little, like something clever at the end of it. I don't know. I mean, I've only started following them in the past year or so, but even in the past year, they've really developed their social media. Yeah,
it's just been such a rapid transformation, and the fact of the matter is that if you have young people's attention, you have the market, because consumers it's not about the old people, because the longevity of a long-term customer when it comes to media is starting young, man. So like those people who are doing it that way with Instagram, like they got it, and that's so cool that you're interested in that kind of thing. And I kind of want to segue into something that you said in the beginning of the podcast, where you said very honestly, and I appreciate you saying this, I put more work into the podcast than I put into school. And this isn't to shame you for that, because I'm going to be honest, as somebody who's an adult and who's graduated college, I did the same thing with my stuff. I put more work into the extracurricular stuff that I was doing, as far as like stuff that I'd be doing as a career in the future, than I did into my books and classes. And I think that that's an important thing to do. And kids that are listening, like, do good in school, go to school and stuff like that. But if you have a passion that you know you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, don't forsake that for some kind of academic path. You don't have to drop out of school or anything crazy like that, but like, you have to make sure that when you're not doing schoolwork, like, you're doing that stuff all the time, because that's how you're going to get hired and that's how you're going to make stuff. So I want to hear your take on that.
No, and even if that's not what you're going to end up doing after college or later in your life, like, it's still good to really dive into something beyond school.
Good point.
And for me, like, that was basketball.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I spent more time working out, you know, and getting better at basketball than I did in school. Now, I'm a good student. You know, I probably have like a 3.8 GPA.
Yeah.
You know, that's a humble brag. But
but
my point is that, like, I'm not a slouch in school.
Right.
But, you know, I'm much more motivated by extracurricular things. Now, without being able to exercise, I can exercise a little bit now, but I'm still not in the weight room yet, and I'm definitely not playing basketball yet. So a lot of my time after school goes into podcasting, because I really want to see how far I can take this. You know, it's the first time that I've been passionate about something beyond basketball. You know, I feel like I'm seeing myself improve, and I'm putting my body, my heart, my mind all into this to make it as successful as possible. And I'm really intrigued by where it can go, and by, you know, people's feedback so far has been pretty good, and, you know, people like it, and I like doing it. So for me, like, it feels like a more efficient use of time than school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you say you're a pessimist, but you're hyping me up really, really badly right now.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm sure you've met people, and this is not to talk down to them, but like, they want to do something. They see Philly Famous, and they probably come up to you like, "Yo, Greg, like, I'm thinking about doing something similar," and, you know, it's like, "All right, well, what are you doing now?" It's like, I'm you know, when I get off of class, like, I'm watching Netflix and stuff. There's probably not a time where you have to sit down and watch Netflix. Like, you're probably like editing episodes all the time. Or am I overshooting?
Well, I mean, like, I honestly,
for you?
in the last month or so, have re-binged watched Game of Thrones with my girlfriend.
Wait, the entire series?
The entire series.
Oh my gosh!
They kind of like, so like within the span of like, with like 2 months, that's what we've been doing.
I'm talking.
So like, yeah, I make time for other things, but like, I really have been doing podcasts like 4 times a week.
Yeah, dude.
And I've really churned them out, and I edit them really fast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of impatient. Like, I really don't have like a specific day that I upload them, because I'm so impatient to just, you know, finish them, edit them, get them out, because I want everyone to hear them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so that's cool though. You're finding a healthy balance, which is good. But, you know, yeah, I guess what I'm talking about is people that they want to have what you have, but they have no idea like how much work goes into it. Like, they have no idea like all the interviews you do, and the people that say no, and you got to reschedule.
Yeah, well, what I've seen with my podcast now, I've all these guests that are also my age, and like, I'm seeing more of the world of like hustlers. Like, these people are really putting in time, like me.
I love people like that.
And it's really been cool to be a part of that. But, you know, what the cool thing about my podcast now is, for the first 20 or so episodes, like, I had to reach out to everybody. Now I've had people like hit me up on Instagram like, "Hey, I'd love to be on your podcast. Like, I love what you're doing. I would love to promote my brand and my product or whatever." Mm-hmm. So that's been really cool to have people want to be on the podcast.
Yeah, dude.
It's awesome.
I mean, listen, man, like, what you're doing right now, you're starting so early too. It's just gonna like get momentum, and the more momentum you get, the more exciting it's gonna get.
Yeah, I mean, you've only been doing this for like a year. He already has like 800 followers, which I think is incredible
on Instagram.
I mean, it might not seem. I mean, to you as a hustler, you're probably like, "Oh, it's only 800 followers," but in under a year, that's awesome.
Well, social media and marketing has probably been my weakest point. I've got some advice from various friends that are better with it. And I've yet to implement all of it. Like, I just deleted the Twitter, you know, the Facebook. I don't really do much on. I'm really just on Instagram, and I don't know the best times to post. I don't know the best hashtags.
Okay.
So that's the part I have to probably hone the most, but it's probably the least important right now. Probably content and quality and my own skills as an interviewer. And just as a conversationalist are probably the most important right now. But at some point, I will really ramp up the social media game.
Well, you know, you got to build your base first before you can get all that settled. Because even if you advertise and you don't have your base, then who's going to be listening, you know? So I think you're doing it the right way.
Yeah, man. It's a solid approach to making something that's going to grow. And you're doing it really well from what I can see, man. So the whole Philly aspect, like, we talked about this briefly when you and I hung out, but like you started Philly Famous with the idea of getting like a lot of Philly oriented people. But aren't you toying with the idea of venturing out beyond that or something like that? I remember we were having a conversation.
Yeah. So
like that.
one of I ask for feedback all the time, and like whether I'm at a bar with friends or out to eat with people, like I'm always asking for feedback. So one of the common things that's been said to me is that I love that it's about Philly Greg, but the name at some point will limit your growth if you want to get bigger, because once you want to expand beyond Philly, people don't really want to listen to a Philly Famous podcast if they're from Detroit or they're from LA. Like they want, it's not as relatable, and just the name limits you. So I see that. I think the idea is more just like a city famous podcast. So my dream, I guess, and my long-term goal would be to grow Philly Famous podcast and then go to a bigger podcast network and say, listen, I think my model is replicable. I think this can be in every major city. I want a New York famous podcast, a Detroit famous podcast, a Dallas famous podcast, whatever.
So mass produce your system.
And basically, I wouldn't be the host of all of them, obviously.
No.
I would just oversee the whole thing and get a different host in each city and do the same thing for every city and have it be just a city famous podcast. And that's really down the line, but that's something that I've written down and definitely keeping in my back pocket.
I like this idea of mass producing a podcast that you've made, man, because you have it down to like the science, this formula. I think that's such a cool idea. You're enterprising it.
Thanks, yeah.
Were you gonna say something?
No, I'm just listening right now.
It's just, I don't know. To me, when I hear about something like that, it's cool to think that one day you may be able to do that when people realize in the industry that like how powerful podcasting is and how powerful it's become. Like, we want to replicate what you do with Philly Podcast. Well, here it is. Like, insert city name here, and then bang, bang, bang. You have segments and stuff. So when you do shows, for me, I listen to Fighter and the Kid. That's one of my favorite ones. And they really just have a whole, like, episode where they just talk about, like, 2 different things or whatever. And then at the end, they have current events where they just hit wild news stories. Mm-hmm. Are there any segments that you're planning to implement into Philly Famous Podcast that are like, and now it's time for current events?
So the one thing I do now is called the Choice Challenge. I mean, it's kind of silly. Like essentially, like after I've gone through the main points that I want to get to with my guest, I'll do, okay, it's Choice Challenge time. This or this, or would you rather this or this, or top 3, whatever. I do 5 or 6 of those, and it's usually related to what they're doing. So if it's, someone that started their own clothing brand, I'll do like, Versace versus Gucci, like, I'll do like something like that.
Something relevant.
To what they're doing, and then it still gets the listeners to get a better idea of who they are, and it's a little bit more lighthearted. And then I'll end with, favorite thing about Philly, what living or dead Philadelphian do you most admire and why, favorite place to get a cheesesteak, and then I wrap it up. And that's usually how I end it, just to tie it all back into Philly.
I'm guessing everyone says Jim's.
No, so that's my favorite. 90% of the people have said De Los Andrews, which is my second favorite, which is in my neighborhood.
I just recently went there.
Yeah,
man.
you like it?
Dude, I got the pizza one. It was ridiculously hot, so I had to leave it there for like a minute, bro. But when I ate it, I was like, wow.
Yeah, so that's been the common one.
It was packed, bro.
But in terms of segments that I want to add, I'm really open to suggestions. I've tried a few things. I've tried the segment called Trifecta, which essentially is on another podcast. There's a segment called Mount Rushmore, where it's basically like top 4 of something, and they go back and forth with the guest naming top 4 snacks to eat while driving, and you just kind of like go back and forth, and like at the end, like someone votes on whose list is better. So I tried that. That didn't really work out too well. It just wasn't that exciting.
Well, it depends on what the topic you pick too, man.
Right. So my new idea is it's gonna be like like an idea segment. I'm gonna like throw out like, this is Greg's idea. Like, what do you think? And like, so like, I don't have any ideas yet. My first one was like, my first idea that came up the other night. It's very silly. It was like, I think it'd be really smart to sell small, cheap blankets in movie theaters, because I think that the other night I went to movie theaters, I was cold as hell, and I was with my girlfriend, so we wanted to kind of get close together, but we had no blanket. And I feel like if there was like a vendor in the movie theater selling blankets, that would do well.
Get your blankets in.
Exactly. So like I would throw an idea like that out to my guests and have them react. And, I'll see. I'm still looking for other segments. I don't want to take segments from other podcasts, although there's some really, really good ones out there.
I know, it's tough, man, when you see it.
And then the Choice Challenge is kind of a ripoff of probably a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
But no, so it's really the Choice Challenge and the Philly stuff at the end are really the traditional segments that I do.
And all these segment ideas that you have, it kind of, don't you find that it's like increasing your conversative skill? That like when you're out of podcasting and you're like an interview for a job, like you're much like with the conversation, it's a lot easier. And even if you're trying to strike up a conversation with a stranger, there's kind of like a level of being conversational. I'm not even sure if conversational is a word that you understand when you're podcasting that you can implement into like other places, like even it's almost like an ice-breaking kind of conversation thing that you get to, because when you sit down with the podcast, you're communicating with this person from like texting and stuff. But when you get face to face, sometimes there's like this cat's got your tongue thing that you need to get over right away in order to make content that's like digestible for someone else. So like podcasting for me, it really has increased my conversational skill and my ability to speak. I mean, you're already a good speaker. It's evident from the stuff
trust me, I
just
was
said.
not at all before starting this. And I think when you're having these conversations with people every 4 times a week, whenever you're doing these podcasts, you're constantly forming your thoughts on everything.
Everything.
On everything. So you have a better idea of where your head's at. You can talk more on the fly.
Yeah.
And I just, my brain isn't going 100 miles an hour. I'm pretty calm. And that's been helpful in terms of conversing outside of the podcasting world.
Yeah, and that's cool, man. I don't know. For me, I definitely see like the growth, and that's so brave of you again to not to start a podcast saying already like I'm not a good speaker, but I'm going to start one anyway. A lot of people, they're like the broadcasting radio type, and that's why they start one. Mm-hmm. But to at first not be, because you start off as a fan, like that's just
right.
what it was. Like I'm a fan of, so why not? You know what I'm saying? But like the fact that you came in not being a good speaker, that
right.
I admire you even more for that.
I try to take various styles and speaking skills from all the podcasts that I listen to.
Yeah.
It's tough because my favorite one is satirical, and like
part of my take is that still your favorite one to this day?
It's my favorite one to this day.
Will always be.
it's just incredible, and they are geniuses. PFT and Big Cat on Barstool from part of my take are.
Is that the official one from Barstool? That's like their AAA like #1 podcast.
It's the number one sports podcast in the world.
Okay.
Like they're just like so quick on their feet. Like I don't know if that's from editing or whatnot, but like it sounds like they're quick on their feet, so. They're satirical, so I can't do that on the mic. I'm not that quick, and I'm not that funny.
They're kind of ruthless too, from what I witnessed.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't really take their style, but from the other ones I listen to, I've kind of taken the cadence, the form of questions they ask. One of my weaknesses in the beginning was really asking good follow-up questions. Like I would have my questions written down, I would ask them. My guest would respond, and then I would go right to the next question. And the one thing I've gotten better at is being able to ask, an insightful and interesting follow-up question, or share my own perspective or my own story on something. Because a lot of the people that listened have said, Greg, like we like it, but we want to get a better sense of who you are, and it's your podcast, so it's all the better ones have been when you shared more about yourself. Yeah. So I've tried to do that in every one. I still want it to be about the guest. It's called Philly Famous Podcast. It's not called the Greg Holdsman Podcast.
Yes.
Although another suggestion that I've gotten is like you should change it to your name, because people are going to listen because it's you. You're the host. People are not necessarily going to listen because of your guest. But I still want to make it about Philly and about the people that I'm promoting and the guests that I'm having on. I don't want it to be about me. That being said, I understand what they mean by sharing my own perspective more often.
Yeah, man, and I think you, from what I'm witnessing in the podcast that I listen to, when you were interviewing the Eagles player, that you've mastered that, man. You ask questions that a listener would want to hear, so the insightful questions are there. But I totally get you. My very first podcast, when I had Rob Lawless on here, I was also very objective based. Like I feel like I started that episode where like I have a mission. I want to know why you did this. I want to know what you did at Penn State and stuff like that. Instead of just letting it be more conversational, where I'm just hearing you say something and then delve into what you're saying for a second and then just letting you go as this. But yeah, when you have a list of questions, sometimes it feels more like a formal interview and it's not like a podcast. So like there is an art to this, you know what I'm saying? There is an art to, and I'm not saying I'm the master of it at all. I'm just learning it, but you're completely right, dude. Like you have to get a hold of how this thing goes. And when you come with like a list of questions, it's good to know what you want to ask about, but it can't just be like objective, like, all right, next, move on. So that's a lesson I've had.
No, one of my early guests stopped me midway through.
Wow. Really?
Made me pause. He's like, Greg, this is pretty good, but relax, dude. Like, we're having a conversation. I don't want this to be an interview.
Who was this? What was he doing?
What was that?
What guest was this?
It's just Kenny St. George, I think, and he has his own like multimedia company, and
okay.
And he was just kind of like, Greg, just act like just me and you in the room, just talking.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's just doing more research. Like on my part, that's just like being more prepared, and that's been that's another huge benefit of this is like I knew nothing about music before this besides just being a fan. Like I knew nothing about entrepreneurship, about business, about technology, and now like I'm doing this about medicine, and now I'm doing research before every guest, every interview. And I just feel like I'm a more educated person just by doing this research, and I'm reading more. I'm watching maybe previous interviews that my guests have done, so I'm not asking the same questions.
That's a good one.
So this podcast helping me with research skills, speaking skills, technology skills in terms of computer programs, stuff like that. Making connections. So it's just helped me in so many different areas that I otherwise wouldn't be getting great practice in.
Yeah, man. It's so cool that is the result. And I talked about growth when it comes to the podcast, and that's part of it. Like, the reason why people get such a kick out of gardening is because they see the progress. And it's the same thing with the podcast, same thing with a lot of things. But again, man, like you said that there was a time where you really wondered why bad things happen to good people, right? And you are somebody that experienced that 110-fold, and now, again, to highlight what you've already said, you've experienced the total flip side of the coin in your situation, where now you found something that you never thought you'd be so invigorated and like in love with to say, and that's all because of something that tragic that happened to you, without negating how tragic that thing actually was. You found this, and now like you've locked in, and I feel like everyone should learn that lesson. Like people that listen to this episode should really see, because the way you've just walked me through it, and the way you walked us through it, and the way you talk about it now is like such a model way to look at something bad that happens. Like you're the poster boy for turning turning a negative into a positive.
Well, I've got to credit my family with that. And my grandmother, we had a couple lunch dates, during the summer during my recovery, and the common thing that she kept saying was, Greg, things happen for a reason. They work out for the best, and any issue that you're going through, she says, this too shall pass, and it will get better. And to me, if you don't believe that things happen for a reason, then you're gonna go crazy, because bad things are gonna happen in your life. They just are. Like, life is messy, and that's what what I've learned here is like everybody goes through something. It's just a matter of when and how. And it's not about religion, and it's not really about faith. It's just the belief that whatever happens to you, there's a larger plan, and what you can control, like I said, is your attitude and your effort. You gotta control what you can control. And if you don't believe that, like, you're going to go insane, because bad things are going to happen.
Right. And I think everybody has a story like that. Like, you ask an adult in their life, like, how they got to where they are today. And it's never like a straight path story. Like, I just knew what I wanted to do, and then I had no problems getting there, and now I'm here today. Like, it's always like, bro, I got rejected from this, and this happened, and then, like, my car blew up, and, my wife left me. And it's always like an amalgamation of sometimes negative things that leads them to a conclusion. We talked about that in the last podcast with Jan. It's weird how this theme is repeating, but like, to understand that and to see that firsthand at such a young age, a lot of people don't learn that until they're older. It's a hard lesson for them to learn. Like, I feel bad for people who are like immensely privileged and have never gone through anything like rough. People, like you said, like, they have a headache, because when real tragedy strikes, like, they're just caught with their pants down, man. They don't understand that, like, enduring that storm will get them to someplace better, dude.
Yeah, it's crazy because, these people that don't go through these hardships and go into certain careers. Not all of them are necessarily happy once they get into that career. You know, they haven't had these hardships where they had to really think about what they were doing. You know, I think about this because I was thinking about going to professional school. Still am kind of, but I'm not really sure if that's my path. And I see a lot of people going, and I see a lot of people drop out. And when I talk to those people that have dropped out, they said, yeah, like, I don't know, just I got there and, you know, it wasn't for me. But, you know, you got there and it wasn't for you, but you paid all this money, you wasted all this time going for this thing that you could have, you know, I guess my thought process thinking about similar pursuits is just that had you had something happen to you that necessarily could steer you differently and have you think about what exactly you're doing with your life. You know, I'm not saying that necessarily it was a good thing that it happened to you. What I am saying is that it allows you the time to think about the choices you're making in your life and what direction you actually want to go into. And here you are with this podcast that's, you know, growing slowly but surely.
Right. No, and during my periods of recovery, I like to think of it like as a movie plot, and how, like, you know, you there's like a lot of hardships, and then it hits a climax, and then it gets, you know, then it gets better, and then, you know, it's just happy ending, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, like, it was really difficult to see the other side throughout a lot of it. You know, I was in this deep depression, and I felt like I was digging myself out of a hole and hadn't even reached the surface yet, and I just didn't really, I just had to convince myself that there was another side to this, and there is the happy ending where you do end up feeling better and you get your life back, and everything happens. And I think I would say that I've kind of hit the climax of misery, and now I'm getting back to where I should be. But definitely, I think it's all about knowing that, like I said before, like that everything gets better, and you just cannot think about giving up. You know, and like I said before, like, I did have times where that thought did cross my mind.
Yeah.
And I can't really describe it any other way than, you know, stuff will get better.
Right. Well, we talked about things being relative. Do you think that your highs are better now that you've had such big lows?
You know, I'm trying to get there. I don't think they are yet, because I still, you know, I'm still recovering, and I don't want to keep honing on that or harping on that, but I'm still not all the way better, and I still haven't had that complete moment of just being able to reflect and feel like I've made it, like that is behind me. I still feel like I'm in it. I still feel like I'm in the struggle, and I'm getting much closer to the end, and I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, I think. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was the?
I was saying, just, you know, you've had a lot of lows. You had very steep lows.
So at some point, I do think that I will have that just complete moment of jubilation, where I can look at my situation and feel like that I've overcome it, and I really hope that everything after that, I can just appreciate for what it is, and just be happy, being healthy, being happy having my loved ones around me, and just be happy not feeling like I did before. Mm-hmm. And that to me, that's what I think, and that might not necessarily be what I feel when the time comes, and that'll be difficult to understand, because I want to be able to just be like, I've gone through this incredible adversity, and I've beat it. Like, I'm so happy, and hopefully I do get to that point.
Yeah. And that leads me into my next question, and this may be a difficult one for you to answer. So, according to your doctors, you may be able to recover fully. That's what they're saying.
They say I will, yeah.
If that's the case, do you ever see yourself playing basketball again?
So, you know, I think at some point, several years down the line, when I've had a year or so without any symptom whatsoever, I would love to go play pickup again. You know, I love basketball. It's still your passion. I still give lessons to various teams throughout the city, and, you know, I still want to be a part of the game. I love working with kids, and I would love to get back out to playing just for fun. And every time I see people playing basketball, it is upsetting knowing that I can't go out there. That being said, what I've experienced in the last couple months, where every little tick that hits my head, or any little bump, whether it's on a wall or on, you know, hitting my head accidentally on someone's shoulder, just like walking by them, or, just not being fully aware and seeing how susceptible I am, that's scary. Because, like I said, the littlest bump sets me back for a week with dizziness, headache, not being able to go to class. And it's just not worth it for me at this point to keep feeling that way. So I'm not going to put myself into a position for that to happen.
Yeah, of course.
And playing basketball, you're at super high risk. My hope and wish is that there's going to be a time where my susceptibility dramatically decreases, and I can walk into a doorway and lightly hit my head and not feel anything, just being like, okay, bump my head, like that's okay, like any normal person would think. Like when I say I hit my head again, like most people think, oh, Greg, you must have like what are you doing? Keep hitting your head this hard. Like I'm like trying to explain to them, like no, it's literally like you wouldn't even notice it going through a day the way I hit my head.
They wouldn't consider it a hit if they saw it.
Right, exactly.
You probably wouldn't even notice it.
You wouldn't even notice it. Like I said, when I was in the gym a few weeks ago and the kid dropped the ball on my head, the person I was sitting next to didn't even notice. Like and I continued my conversation on the phone. I just knew that I got hit. And
in your mind, did you have like a heart stop moment where you're like, this is gonna come back?
Yes,
bro.
and like my doctors did say like a lot of what you're feeling could be from anxiety, but like from an objective standpoint, I felt what I felt. Like
yeah,
right.
The strange thing about psychology is that just like neurology, we don't know a lot about it yet. So much research that needs to be done, and it's all subjective. What you think is different than I think. It's different from what you think, and what changes one person is not necessarily going to change the other person. It's very open to interpretation.
It's more gray.
No, but I mean, back to what your original point. Like, I would love to get back to my basketball, but I'm not gonna at all in any way risk my health by going to play. It's just not worth it. Like I said earlier, the depression was twofold. The first was basketball, but once that passed, it was like basketball was so low on my worry list when I was going through every day feeling like I couldn't concentrate, feeling like I wanted to shoot myself. Like basketball became so secondary to everything,
right?
That I was less upset about not playing basketball anymore than I thought I would be, because I didn't anticipate the daily suffering that what was going on in my head.
Yeah. Did you feel at any moment that, because I'm not an athlete, man. I'm really not. I'm more of a nerd type. My brother really is an athlete, man. He's had multiple concussions. I've seen him firsthand get injured. This season, man, he took a really serious leg injury. First game of the season, was out for the rest of the season. Heartbreaking moment. For me, one of my saddest moments ever in life so far has come to me at the age of 23. And it's not even something that happened to me. It's just witnessing my brother not being able to play. But the values that being a student athlete teaches you, because I always feel that when I'm talking to people who were previously student athletes, they have this sort of integrity that's been built into them. And that's from, being somebody who's young, but being forced to practice every single day. And there's a lot of discipline that you have to have being a student athlete. I was an RA at Temple. Ryan was also an RA at Temple. I was only an RA for 1 year. But the majority of the students I had to govern is probably not the right word. Resident assistant.
Live with, I would say.
Be a snitch with. Live with, yeah, essentially, were the freshmen, the incoming freshman football players. Those are the majority of the people I had. And I saw in them a lot of what I saw in my little brother, which I'm sure is how I ended up being the one living with them. So do you think that the values that you were taught just growing up playing sports helped you later on, and that just like early on being a college athlete, dealing with that whole thing, man? Like, because there's pressure when you come in your freshman year, man. Not only do you have classes and homework, but like you got to practice every day, you got to be up early. Did all those years of discipline help you to like gain your footing now?
Without question, like absolutely. There's such value in being a student athlete, and sports can teach you so much, and being a part of a team, it's just so important. That's why employers love student athletes.
Yeah.
Because they come in with already values such as, hard work, grit, teamwork, just dedication, and absolutely, like, I don't regret anything about my life growing up playing sports, and if anything, like it's been just a huge part of making me who I am today and what I believe, and there's nothing I can say that's negative about sports. Like I think they're incredible, and it's a really special way, I think, to to gain life skills.
Yeah. And that comes from adversity, man. God, that comes from practicing when you don't feel like practicing. Anytime you want to do something, you don't want to do something, but you have to do it to make yourself better. It teaches you just mental
toughness.
Mental toughness. I was gonna say mental maturity, when you're not hung up and complaining anymore, which a lot of people do. And so I don't know, just speaking, the way that you hold yourself and the way that you speak, I can tell, man, a lot of those lessons that were drilled into you as a student athlete is how you govern your thing today. What would you give as we close, man, because we're coming up on the 2-hour mark? What would you give advice wise, and you can say anything you want to add in, what would you give advice wise to someone in a similar situation as you, maybe not with the sports injury, but they're forced to take a different direction in their life? And what would you what advice would you give to young podcasters? Somebody who are like, hey, I want to start something, because you probably met 100 eager beavers in your life, man. What advice would you give to those two people?
Yeah, I mean, for a young podcaster, and this just goes for anybody trying to do or that wants to do something, like, do it for the right reasons. Like,
right.
Do it because you love it, and don't even think about what other people think of you or, your listenership until way down the road. The beginning of it, which is the point I'm in right now, should all be about finding your voice. It should be about continually improving, and don't shut off anybody that wants to help you, and actively go out looking for people to help you.
You gotta be a yes man for the beginning.
You gotta be a yes man. Nothing should be beneath you.
Yeah.
And the one thing that has just been so common between all of the amazing people that I've met in my life, the people that I've read about in terms of leaders, CEOs of companies, coaches, all of them that are successful, the common theme is that they treat people the right way. I really think that if you are earnest in your life and you treat everyone with respect, it's going to come back. And I believe in karma, and I believe that if you're kind and you're caring and you're passionate, people will respect you in return. And I think that a huge key to success is just the way you treat people.
Cool, man.
I was just going to ask, in terms of people who have suffered concussions, maybe significant concussions like you had, do you have any advice for them in terms of that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really helpful to know that people have gone through what you're going through. I did a podcast with a journalist, and afterwards she wrote an article about me, and I had so many people reach out to me saying, Greg, I can't believe how much your story resonated with me. I've had something so similar. I had to sit in a dark room for months at a time with my symptoms. And I think just understanding that you're not alone, and that goes for anybody that's going through a depression, that you're not alone is so critical to get yourself back on your feet. And to deal with your situation. And in terms of concussions, man, they're tough. Everyone's different. No one, they're like snowflakes. No one concussion is the same. But they will get better. That's and I'm still convincing myself of that. It will get better. So that's the one thing I would say to someone going through a concussion right now, and hopefully someone that's listening to a podcast like this when they're going through that tough time, similar to what I did, it will get better.
That's dope, man. Greg, I want to thank you for coming on the show, man. I want to thank you for just being super honest, dude, and just, totally upfront about everything in your life, because it's like you said, helpful, but it's also a really nice piece of podcasting. Right now, man, I just want you to plug your Instagram, your Twitter, your website, anything that you have that you want people to know about. Just let them know, dude.
Yeah, great. And first of all, I should have done this at the beginning, but thank you so much to you and Ryan for having me on.
Oh, you're coming on again, bro.
Yeah, this is awesome.
I love it.
This is inspiring me.
We only this was way longer than I thought it was, but we really only touched this. We got through me, but I would love to talk about whatever else. Sure. But in terms of my podcast, like I said, it's called Philly Famous Podcast. On Instagram, it's at Philly Famous Podcast, and I'm at I think G Holdsman 15 maybe. But it's more important that you follow the Philly Famous one. I'm on iTunes and SoundCloud. Just type in Philly space famous space podcast. I have a couple episodes on YouTube, but I haven't really gotten to the film yet. I'm going to start eventually, but right now I'm more just the audio. Like I said, I deleted my Twitter. I'm going to make a new one. I'm also on Facebook at Philly Famous Podcast. But I really, I put the links in my bio on my Instagram. I put up pictures of my guests with a quote from one thing they said during the podcast. And like I said, I'm always open to suggestions, recommendations of guests, suggestions of segments, or just constructive criticism. So please hit me up on Instagram at Philly Famous Podcast, like I said, for any of that. And I'm trying to make this better and better, and would appreciate any support. Leave a rating, leave a comment, whatever.
Sweet.
Thank you so much.
Could you reach into my backpack real quick and grab the shirt, because I want to hawk your shirts too.
Nice.
Just toss that. I want to show it to the camera. So where can they get the shirt, man? You were very grateful enough to give us.
Once
the
again, this is a shirt by Philly Screen. Guy Tim Naismith's a friend of mine, printing my shirts. If you would like one, $15, hit me up on Instagram at, like I said, the Philly Famous Podcast.
Yeah.
And I will send them to you.
Totally.
It's a cool logo. My friend Nye Murdoch, he's at Made by Murdoch. He's a digital artist. He made the logo, and I had him on the podcast. It's a pretty cool episode.
Yeah, bro.
But just to say lastly, just a couple episodes that you might be interested in. I had Monet Davis on early on. She's the Little League World Series girl.
You had her?
Yeah.
Yo,
yeah.
What? Who am I talking to right now?
It wasn't a terrific episode. Honestly, she's a 16-year-old girl.
Is she from Philly?
She's from Philly.
Wow.
It's difficult to expect a lot from a 16-year-old girl, but that was decent. I had a trauma surgeon named Ben Braslow on. He's one of the best trauma surgeons in Philly. That was a pretty cool episode.
It's impressive.
Rick Lovato, like I said, Eagles long snapper, Super Bowl champion. That's cool after the fact, because I did it a week before the Super Bowl. That's a pretty good episode. And then the most recent one I did with Aaron Carter as a sports writer is really good. There's a bunch more that I could name, but those are the ones that come to mind. Some of the cool plug additions: Ben Thomas is a musical engineer. I Am Benjamin, that was pretty cool. Deja is an up-and-coming R&B artist that is really, really good, and her songs are on my podcast. So I would recommend those. And lastly, just thanks you guys so much. I really appreciate being able to tell my story.
Oh my god,
no man, no.
Are you crying?
No, I hit my nose on this. I was shaking my head like, don't thank us. And doom, I hit my nose on this. But no, man, I want you on again. Maybe to definitely have another episode where we just talk about random stuff, man, because you're just a cool guy to talk to in general. But I really did want to make this episode about your story and just like you telling people what's up, and you did. You delivered 100%, man. Thank you so much. Thank you. We appreciate it, dude. Always.
Thank you so much.
All right. It's been episode 26, Andrewcast. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.